Welcome to Before Your Eyes, Martin Kagan again. I have a new release that I'm really pleased to present to you today. We're going to jump straight into it and not waste time. From the email or from the link that we provide, you'll get something that looks like this with an embedded and cross-linked set of information, the manual, PowerPoints, illustration on the discussion on the documents, and then critically two analyses that AI has generated against the data to see the correlation between the data and what I'm saying to you and how that matches. And then there's the link that opens the system itself, which we'll do now. So the system is already preloaded in this case with a lot of information. We've got several sheets, and we are dealing with a public company in South Africa called Discovery Health, an outstanding organization which has grown tremendously. And what we want to do is view it. So quite simply, let's just go in and look at its income statement from public information and from what AI has generated. So there's no misdisclosure. I cannot attest to the figures other than the fact that it's been generated based off actual information. And in this, we are able to generate its balance sheets and income statement and a variety of other information. On the left-hand side is a Sankey index structure, which provides you a unique framework. As you can see, if I click on here, I highlight it in the Sankey, and then I'm going to jump directly into putting this into, instead of perspective mode, into orthographic, which I tend to prefer. The camera motion doesn't quite agree with me, so I'm going to put it back to perspective for the moment, just that allows me the zoom in function. Can come back to the other aspect. But I'm going to take it from the 3D rows into the new index-based rows. And here you'll see that the rows has actually been broken down into three constituent items, which are essentially the elements making up what we have here is the detail of the information, but by index. And there are several groups, but let's look at revenue and outcomes revenue. So essentially it's been indexed. You can actually see the items and you can see data over time, crystal clear as to the involvement of that data. We're now going to take this stage further, a much bigger stage further. We're going to project forward. And I'm not sure that it will work in this one, so what I'm going to do to make sure that I don't get tangled up, I'm going straight back to the rows, and I'm going to switch it now from current, and I'm going to push forward 10 periods. I don't know that that's the case because I've got a time graph that allows me to see that, and I'm going to push it through on that time graph all the way through to 2034. It was at 2024 to see the consistent and copaceticness of that data. I'm also going to support that by bringing up the data sheets. Data sheets are made up of three separate sheets. The principal buying sheet, or the original sheet, it says original, and if you look at that sheet, it will be all the way to 2024. And there's the 10 periods that I added, which are blank. And now we'll go to sheet 2 in the same position. We'll see that sheet 2 has got the balance of those 10 items, and sheet 3 is obviously the combination of those two. And that's what generates flow through forward calculation. We can change that growth factor from low, medium to high as three separate concepts. We're keeping it as it is. We're going to hide the data sheet, bring up the system again. And we're going to switch back to where we were a moment ago in terms of the index. Now we've got the index, and we're going to, on that index, choose that revenue one more time. Go back forward in order to go forward. Okay, so there it is again. And these tooltips indicate where that revenue is coming from and supported by the interpretation of that revenue. Now, these key points have all been analyzed by AI itself. It knows the data and it's looked at this data and it's given us a summary. And this is correlated literally at 99% correlation to their findings. You can read the findings. It says whatever we're saying is correct, and that's the interpretation, and thereby the visual structure gives you strength in understanding the wads of paper that come with the analysis that it's trying to achieve. But here we can see in 1 second what are the driving features, and now we can take it a stage further. We come and we see it in this format here, and we go back again in order to select. There it is again, and now we are at 3-dimensional and 2 dimensions asynchronously. Here's the dimensional representation of what we're talking about with exact information at every single point, and it provides us with a solid base of understanding of what we're talking. We can take this further and we can make this look even clearer by changing the focus of attention. Go back to go forward again. Looks the same, but it has been enhanced. That means that the focus of the data is now, instead of at the parent level, it's looking at the level straight behind. This is 5 dimensions, so it's looking at it relative to dimension 4. And here we can see the clarity of that data and if it matches up to our expectations. So we are essentially absorbing the information visually much quicker than we can read it. If you want to try take on that Excel schedule, you're welcome. If you want to read through the documentation, you're welcome, but you won't get the visual clarification that this is providing at this point in time. So we've got that in place. I'm going to switch back now to the full rows. And there is the entire thing. And here's the history of this company. It's exquisite. And you can see its growth projection and growth rates and all that kind of stuff. I see that it is topping out. I'll answer that in a second or two. But it's sufficient for us to be able to get a handle on what is going on. If you want to come back to actual up to present, we can have a look and see what's going on. And obviously with the greater clarity of granularity of the data at all different levels, this granularity within the visual will enhance and improve as time goes on and we get more data. The important thing to understand is this data was actually generated in AI according to the specific index model that Before Your Eyes has developed. It's not hard. It's an easy Excel schedule, XY, transformed into XYZ by a mere index structure. And that's the secret of the system. The patent is mapping that index to a 3-dimensional object and being able to map it on a one-to-one basis. So we can take this and we can enter into the full mode view where we see it even larger and clearer. Or you can imagine looking at it on VR. There's a button for VR. You can choose VR to watch it through on VR. Only issue with VR, it puts you in immersive, which means that you're in the center of it, which changes things. But if you look at it on cinematic view, then you see this thing 60 foot high and with full clarity, and obviously all these tooltips and everything are working perfectly. Another thing that we can look at while we're looking at stuff is we can choose the rings. There they are. So let's say that we want to look at just that outside ring. There's the outside ring of the actual data, so we don't get confused with the inner chambers. This is the actual data itself. That's the final outer sheath of the data. It's quite impressive. I acknowledge and would like to get your views on it. Please feel free to make a comment. Certainly appreciate the time and interest, and I hope to bring you further development as I take this thing further and further. We can also drill down to a specific level. Everything that is blurred on purpose because we're looking at the item itself. So we can see quite clearly what we're looking at. So that together with the table, and the table is linked exactly to the item itself, we get a great, there it is highlighted, we get a greater clarity as to the numerical versus the visual clarification of what we're talking about. I'll switch out again. We're looking at that, and there we are at this level over here. And if I'm not mistaken, we were at that purview. So, with that said, let me thank you, encourage you to view the videos and to play with the system. Nothing better than playing with it. Thank you again, Martin.